How's it going? I'm Aaron, and this is Sig Media Productions giving you a ranking video review. Now, this particular video is going to tackle a lot of the games that are coming from Software, a company that at this point is pretty much well known throughout the gaming community, specifically for the Souls games genre. Back from its very humble beginnings, basically back before I even really started jumping into the series, where they had I think it was called the King's Guard or King's Slave series. Uh, I really only started jumping in on the games when a little game called Demon Souls came out. I totally was engrossed with the way that game was basically presented, and I guess I was pretty much dealing with the concept that a lot of people wanted to talk about how hard the series, at least that particular game was, and eventually that became a really hallmark aspect for the entirety of From Software's games, specifically dealing with these Souls-like games in general. But I found myself throughout the experience really getting deep and heavy with the subject matters that each game was expressing, or just how well the gameplay itself, or at least the design of the games themselves were. And so I actually came up with a particular list for the games in the series that I've had the pleasure to be able to play. And it'd be interesting to see how well these games or this ranking list compares to yours. Oh, one more thing. Just if you're already watching this video and you're a fan of what we do here on the channel, keep it. I'm just wanting to give y'all a little heads up. We are so close to getting to that 1,000 mark for subscribership. So if you do like this video, please like us and consider subscribing to the channel. We got so much more coming to you, and it'd be a joy to just hit that milestone. So if you're able to help us out, will be so much fun. It'll be such a pleasure. Starting probably from the bottom up, let's go down to where I thought was probably the weakest entry into the From Software series, and that deals with actually the sequel to a previous game in the genre, that being Dark Souls 2. Now, technically, yes, it is, in my opinion, probably one of the worst ones in the series. But I still feel is a From Software game, and it deals with the Souls genre. So there is some stuff that goes around it. The storyline is actually a little bit lackluster compared to what was left over from the previous game. You're still pretty much in the world of Orlando, but you're dealing with the concept of the dying flame, almost completely burnt out, and a new overarching malevolent force is drawing your character in. The Souls genre games are pretty much action RPG games or role playing games, and they really do take on a lot of the dark fantasy elements that revolves around a lot of action role playing games in general. But for the most part, when it comes down to the story, a lot of the elements that From Software utilizes in order to tell it isn't necessarily in your face. No, if anything, a lot of the developers of this series and a lot of the other games throughout this genre really emphasizes is exploration. Items that you pick up, certain areas that has different motives or characters or the NPCs in general floating around it. It's a lot of how you're going to be able to piece together a lot of what the story is trying to tell you. And even then, you're not necessarily getting the full picture. But where exactly does Dark Souls 2, or at least why does Dark Souls 2 really has this very low aspect down here on the list? It deals with the mere fact is, I feel as though from the previous game, which was Dark Souls, I feel as though a lot of the elements that made that game fun is pretty much just not there. And I guess that is actually pretty really evident when you understand that the main director that was from the previous game of Dark Souls really took a seat back and was really just overarching, at taking the aspect of just monitoring how the process is going around. And I feel as though that aspect alone is a lot of why the gameplay itself is just not there. The story development was just completely weak. And for the vast majority of it, it just wasn't really the same experience that you really wanted to get from the previous entries. Now, the next entry on, or at least the higher step level on this list, in my opinion, happens to be Demon Souls. Demon Souls was, again, the one that really jumped off the map from its previous entries for a lot of the Demon Souls or Dark Souls games that came down in the From Software's production. The story itself really centers in on your character being this guiding light against these overarching threats, or these archdemons that are threatening to destroy the kingdom and the world that you're inhabiting, and having to deal with this element of this dark presence that's overarching everything else. I feel as though one of the major aspects that I actually really enjoyed in this game deals with some of the elements of these final, finding these really interesting weapons that you are able to explore. That is actually something they really don't necessarily do, and to the extent that they did in this game, into previous or in later entries down this list. But I feel as though some of the elements that they do introduce in this series, or at least in this particular entry, was particularly interesting. Again, some of the characters, the maiden that you work with, I feel as though there was a little bit more of a character, or at least I feel as though her presence in this game was a enjoyable aspect that actually got me intrigued enough to go forward. I like the elements of the old English that they tied into this game with a lot of the NPCs characters. That it's actually something they kind of leave or they leave alone later down the line with other entries in the series. So I wish they actually had that one reoccurring down the line. But it's something that they really almost is selectively in just the Demon Souls itself. Now, the next entry is actually a successor of sorts to the previous one, being Demon Souls. This one is Dark Souls, the first in the Souls, or at least the Dark Souls trilogy. For Dark Souls, I feel as though the main thing that got me hooked into this particular story of this particular game is its actual use of story. The fallen royal line or divine line of King Gwen, his children, figuring out what happened to the bustling, beautiful, divine city of Orlando, coming across the numerous NPCs in the wake of the dwindling ash that is coming from the dying light of the fires of Gwen's golden age, and just really getting in touch with everything that was delving deeper into this lore of what Dark Souls has to offer. The gameplay was a little bit more refined from what you actually saw in the previous entry of Demon Souls, and I found myself exactly with almost all these games, aside from maybe a few ones later on down the line. When it comes to these more fantasy element variations, I love playing with characters that deals with magic. So dealing with the mage like characters, archetype figure in this game. Was intriguing, especially being able to find the unique spells that he was able to use against other enemies and other characters that, or at least other players that that you might meet down the road. Also, I felt it was kind of rude, and also another enjoyable element of being able to be come across certain players. Either they let them help you fight on certain enemies, or fight against you by stab you in the back, coming in and invading your world. That was actually something that was really really interesting. And now, it's not to say that wasn't necessarily introduced well in Demon Souls, but I just felt it was done better here. Next down the lane, it deals with Dark Souls 3. I feel as though the main thing that you need to get for Dark Souls 3 compared to Dark Souls 1 is that this one is pretty much everything that Dark Souls 1 could have been, but just even better. And I feel as though the concepts of the more of the world aspects that are introduced into this evolving story that deals with the fallen kingdom of Orlando and how it evolves, and how the people and how the NPCs and your character deals with the concept of the age of being whether or not you let the age die out or you continuing on through becoming the Fire Keeper, is something that's really interesting to see throughout these particular entries. I like the concept of being in some ways being a kingmaker of sorts, being able to hunt down these I believe they call them heirs to fire, and taking them to their thrones after you defeat them. I like that aspect. That was really really cool. And I just feel as though it was enjoyable to just go back into the series. And I've also, I think one of the major things I think I liked Dark Souls 3 is the increase in the artistic design, and just the rate in which we were able to just experience that world through this particular game's entry. Now, the next game on this list might be a little bit controversial considering how many people actually ended up loving this particular entry. I like the game too, but I just didn't like it as much as I do like my other ones that are a little bit higher above, and I'm talking about Elden Ring. Elden Ring was a massive game for from Software. It's probably the largest game they actually made thus far, and it really does show. And I feel as though that is both a blessing and a curse for this particular entry. For why I both love it and at the same time look a little bit down on it. Now, the higher the larger aspect of this, it was awesome being able to explore the lands between. There was so much to do. There were so many places that you honestly could see beyond the horizon, and you were actually able to go there. And he was able to find so many unique aspects of the artistic design and the gameplay elements within it that was just enjoyable to be able to experience. But at the same time, on the lower end of it, because it was so vast, I feel as though they left on the cutting room floor certain elements that were just not nearly as well explained, or at least not well, visualized in my personal opinion. There was just so many. It was cool to go ahead and fight all these cool enemies, especially all the unique bosses they had in there. But I feel as though there was also a case where certain bosses or certain enemies you was encountering probably weren't necessarily as well realized as they were, and as you was experiencing the game, go forward as you was playing it. I feel as though there's certain things they could have done to make it even more grander, and there's some things that he probably did that was better, grander in the previous entries. And just in case you want to get a little bit more deeper dive into how I really felt about Elden Ring, I do have a already done review on the channel if you're just going to go ahead and check that one out. Now, my next entry on this list is a game that I feel as though for many individuals out there is probably our highest ranking from the From Software games on anybody's list. Happens to be Bloodborne. I absolutely love anything that has to deal with the Victorian era or anything that's gothic in nature, and I feel as though Bloodborne completely puts me in that mood of being a cool hunter fighting these larger than life gothic, demonic, and incredibly outworldish, nightmarish monsters and creatures that I'm here for as a gamer. I loved walking around Yarnum and feeling like I'm the baddest dude out there in the shadows, stalking and killing and trying to piece together what really happened and why is blood, such an important commodity in this world. I love the gameplay to be able to switch between these cool, larger, terrifying weapons and switch between them in certain modes was such a unique aspect to add into the concept of From Software games. And then being able to take away the concept of the sword and shield for guns and all these other cool trick weapons is just awesome. The world itself is so vibrant and dark and mysterious, and it's so sad and so gothic. It's just all wrapped up in a pretty bow that I absolutely loved, and I can't wait. And I hope From Software listens, like, please, please, give us a sequel to this game. It is so awesome. But of course, we're saving the best for last. Now, last but definitely not least, is probably my highest ranked From Software game, and that being Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro is probably one of the more unique games in the From Software series, for that being the case that, unlike a lot of the other entries down on this list, this is one of the only ones in From Software's releases that actually deals with a character that is not created by the player. No, you are literally putting into the driver's seat of this character known as Sekiro, that is a shinobi, for all intents and purposes, a ninja on this quest to find his lord and bring him back and bring him salvation. The cool elements they added to this fantasy element variation of Japan is amazing. Ashina is such a vibrant and lush world to step into. And the gameplay is so good. Some of the unique elements, the grappling system, the transversal, being able to attack with this. Again, that's another unique element for Sekiro, is that you really don't have that many weapons to really work with. You're really only really working with one particular sword, sword to hack and slash your enemies down with, and numerous trick weapons, or at least trick gimmick props from the Shinobi fade that you're working with, Shinobi prosthetic, and that's really it. And that's really all you actually need to work with this game. It's so good. The story is so engaging that I pleaded for some DLC content, but alas, we never really got it. And I understand, but at the same time, I'm like, if they give me a sequel to Sekiro, I'm here for it. I absolutely loved playing this game. I played it probably, this is probably the one from Software game that I can definitely say for sure that I played multiple times. It's one of the few games that I played multiple games in general, from start to finish, and that's high praise. I absolutely loved playing Sekiro, and I love these From Software games, and this is definitely the highest one on my list. But there you go. That's my rankings from the From Software games that's that they have given out to us, and I look forward to even more entries in the, as From Software kicks them out. As far as any unique aspects that I kind of want to see coming from a From Software game down the line, I would love to have the elements of more hack and slash concepts put in here. I understand that we are dealing with you want to have a larger audience to be able to play these games, so you don't necessarily run too far off into more darker or more gory aspects from other games like Mortal Kombat and whatnot. But be able to, you're utilizing weapons in a game like this, and the subject matter is already dark enough. I'm okay to start seeing some more hacking off of limbs and whatnot, or more a little bit of gore here and there. I also wanted to see a little bit more vibrancy in NPCs and be able to interact with them on a more deeper and intimate level. But for the most part, I like where From Software is going. I can't wait to see what they're going to bring to us next. Fingers crossed there are some entries that they actually revisit, but as it is, I'm game, I'm here, and I'm ready. I would love to know what your list is for From Software games. Which ones did you like? Which ones you didn't? Which ones you want to see revisited? And which you might want to see going forward down the line. But as always, I'm Aaron. This is Seeking Media Productions. Please hit the bell down there at the bottom for notifications if you want more content just like this. And I'll see y'all later.